All right, everybody, we're about a minute away from 10 o'clock. Just for those on the call today, we are going to be streaming this live on social media. So on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on YouTube. And we are, recording the conversation as well. We'll get into a little bit more about what we're going to be talking about today in the conversation. Just a little bit past 10. We'll make sure everybody has a chance to get in. But of course, this is a roundtable, so everyone will have the opportunity to take part, ask questions, and be a part of the conversation. So thank you all for joining. We'll just give everyone a few more minutes to jump on in. You're just joining, we're just going to wait a couple minutes for everyone to hop on in. We're about a minute past 10 right now, so we'll wait for about 1 or 2 more minutes and make sure everyone can get in and be a part of the conversation. We're just waiting for one last person to join us here, and then we'll get started. All right, so just for record here, we got 77 people joining us so far. That's awesome. Thank you so much for everyone being a part of the conversation today. We're just waiting for our last guest here to log in and join us, and we'll get started. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. My name is Joe Russo. I'm the president and CEO of the Palm Beach Tech Association. And I'm joined here also by some members of our team, Nikki Cavus, who's our Vice President of Development, Monica Rojas, who's our event specialist, and Ali Costa, who's our talent intern. I want to give a huge shout out to them first off for really making these last couple months and this last week really impactful for our organization and for those that we seek to serve throughout South Florida, throughout our tech community, and really in any possible way those around us. We have been focused for the last few months on trying to build better resources and build a better community, especially online through these very odd times that we find ourselves in. And in this past week, we had our conversation on Monday about the events that have transpired in the world around us in these last few weeks. And we made a choice as a team to really start and be a part of a larger conversation. In short, we've had a community creed as part of our organization for some time now that reads, "We are wholeheartedly committed to building a welcoming, collaborative, and inclusive community for all." And we simply said, we will elevate the conversation for equality in our community through whatever means possible. So this conversation today is very much part of that, but we will be working on other ideas, other initiatives, and we welcome everybody in our community to be a part of that and a part of building a community we all strive to be a part of. So thank you all very much for joining us today and for being part of it. With that, I'd love to just start by just giving a little bit of a format and etiquette for today. Everybody will be muted. Panelists will have their cameras on and will be a part of the cameras and microphones on. We're also going to use the raise hand function for Zoom if you're on here. If you're following us on social media or you're in the Zoom meeting and you'd love to post your questions, that is another way that you can get information to us. And if you'd like to either raise your hand and be a part of the conversation virtually, or like to just post the question and we can read it off. I'm going to do my best to keep the conversation moving and make sure that there's some good cadence for the Q&A. So, just basic, webinar etiquette, post questions, and, we'd love the conversation to be as collaborative as possible. With that, I'm really excited to introduce our panelists today who are going to help lead the discussion and our conversation. First off is April Fulton. She's a board member of the Palm Beach Tech Association and currently the engineering director at Red Ventures and Bankrate.com. They are based in Palm Beach. Her team is based in Palm Beach Gardens. She's an experienced leader who's demonstrated a history of working with digital business and a data-driven mindset. She graduated from FIU's College of Business and continues to express her skills in digital transformation, agile methodology, cross-functional team leadership, team building, and software development. And she is by far one of the strongest proponents of building a strong corporate culture that I've ever seen. So thank you very much for April for joining us. And we'll go through and ask everybody to introduce a little bit of themselves after I introduce our whole team here. Next up is Ricky Aiken. He's the founder and executive director of Innovators. He actually typically sits about a stone's throw from my office here, and he's perhaps one of the most impactful human beings I know in the world. He's made it his life's mission to inspire and empower the inner city youth in West Palm Beach to embody the change they so desperately need in their communities. He's a boots on the ground, all-in type of team agent who believes that real change happens when the people who need it lead it. As a child who was raised in the city of West Palm Beach's inner city and seeing firsthand the plights of our society and growing up in the community of concentrated disadvantage. He's well known throughout our city for his work in the community and has found a way to use his life experiences and social capital for bringing hope to the neighborhood and promote the value of resilience. Ricky, thank you so much for joining us, man.
My pleasure. Happy to be here. Hello, everybody.
And next up, Shevrin Jones. He's a member of the Florida House of Representatives and has been representing our community here for about the past decade, I believe. He is born in Hollywood, Florida, and represents that same city and community today in the Florida House of Representatives. He's also the deputy Democratic leader in the House. He works very much so in education environment, where he founded the South Florida Youth Summit, Lead Nation. He taught AP Chemistry at Broward County Public Schools, and he's currently the executive director of the Florida Reading Corps. Thank you very much for Shevrin for joining us today as well.
Thank you for having me.
So with that, I would love for our panelists to help introduce themselves. And we'll start with April, then go to Ricky, and then Shevrin. to talk a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you work on a regular basis to try and build a strong culture of inclusivity in the communities you're part of. So April, thank you so much for joining us. We'd love to start with you.
Awesome. So I'm April Fulton. I've been a member of the South Florida community for over 20 years. I've worked in a variety of tech organizations in South Florida. I've been a member and participating with Palm Beach Tech for the last few years. Currently, I work at Red Ventures. I lead our mortgage and advertising platform engineering team. We've built a very diverse team here. We have team members from Dade, Broward, as well as Palm Beach County that represent individuals from a variety of age groups, backgrounds, sexual orientations, nationalities, religions, and different abilities. So we're really fortunate to have a very diverse team, but I think diversity is only a part of it. The biggest part of it is inclusivity. So what does inclusivity mean for us? It really means not just being at the table, but being an active participant at the table. And how do you feel like you really belong? So we've really tried to put an emphasis on empowering people, putting people in positions where they feel like that they can speak up, and also supporting them, not just being an ally for people, but being an advocate for people. And so we spend time doing a lot of team building, getting to know each other, spend time on one-on-ones, understanding where people have come from, so we can listen and understand and develop empathy for one another. So I think I'm in a unique position to kind of use my position to support people, mentor them, put them in positions to stretch themselves a little bit, and then also support them along the way. So those are some of the kind of things that we do in our office to kind of support and advocate for inclusivity.
All right. Yeah, my name is Ricky Aiken, and I founded Inner City Innovators. Basically, everything I do through this organization was based on my experiences growing up in the inner city of West Palm Beach. I like to say the only difference between me and a guy standing on a street corner selling drugs is I had mentors come into my life and expose me to the other side of the world, the other side of clematis. And for a lot of kids growing up in communities like mine, that which they're most exposed to becomes the only thing they feel like is possible in their world. When I was growing up, the only image of a male role model I had was my older brothers, and they were the neighborhood drug dealers. So for most of my life, I thought if I was going to find success, it would be in that realm. But, I had mentors come into my life, expose me to the other sides of the tracks, and let me know that there was so much more to the world. And that's what I seek to do with my young men. I haven't gone to college. I dropped out of school. All I have to my name is a GED. And if I've been able to find the success that I found because I was able to believe in myself and make the connections necessary to help secure me in the world, I think the same could be true for the young men that I work with. It's about removing the barriers, removing the fear of working with people that they aren't familiar with, that can increase their access to information and capital that they'll need to succeed in the world. So thanks to Joe and my friends at 1909, I believe we're headed in the right direction with that. I picked my guys up from the hood. We come to 1909, and they're rubbing shoulders with people doing a lot of amazing things in the workspace. So I'll end it there because I know we'll probably go deeper.
Yeah, and real briefly, 1909 is the nonprofit co-working space that Palm Beach Tech is based in. That we played a big part in launching and leading. We have a lot of really great people like Ricky is all part of our great little community here. So thank you. And Shevrin, love for you to go next, sir.
Thank you so much, Joe, and thank you to each of you. It's good to be on with you. My name is Shevrin Jones, and I've been a state representative now for the last 8 years. I started off as an educator, teaching AP Bio and AP Chemistry in Broward County at Everglades Senior High School. That is where I got my initial at what role I play in this whole aspect, mentorship for our young people, but also what it looked like and how we move the agenda to make sure that I'm doing my part in reaching back. And that outlook came in my third year in teaching, and I had the opportunity to teach level 1 students environmental science, realizing that the students who were in that classroom, they had been counted out by so many of their other teachers and counted out by even sometimes their family members. And all they were looking for was that one individual who would come in and say that you are my hero or you are the person who I look up to. And so that is where I kind of taken that and started a nonprofit organization called Lead Nation, where we believe in not just mentorship, but also believe in teaching young people that as you progress, making sure that they're bringing other individuals along, putting them in opportunities and areas that they would not be in if it wasn't for that opportunity. And then taking those same steps and those experiences into the legislature. And when I got into the legislature, being able to put forth policies that reached back to make sure they come back into the community to touch those same individuals that Ricky is talking about. And so when we're talking about inclusivity and we're talking about how does that look and what role do I play the role from a policymaker, but also I play a role by calling it out when it's not being seen. And so that's where I am in the situation. I'm sure we're going to talk more about it because I believe that right now we're in a position to where conversations are great. But I think a lot of people are saying, what are we going to do as it pertains to the action steps that we're going to move forward, moving past the conversation. That's the movement that I want to be a part of, the action steps moving forward.
Awesome. And that's, of course, why we're having this conversation today, to try and talk a little bit about ways that we as a tech community can come closer together and be a part of the change that we need in this country and we need in wherever possible in our community. So with that, I would love to start off with some questions just individually to our folks here. And we'll start with April, and we'll go through a first round of questions. If anybody has anything they'd like to add, feel free to add it into chat. We can bring it up, and then we can do, of course, the hand raise functionality as I mentioned. But let's start with April. April, as much as I've seen through your work at Bankrate and at Red Ventures, you have a terrific culture, and I think evident through a lot of your team members who are on the call with us today to be here and support you and learn from the conversation. But how has that positive and vibrant company culture led to inclusivity throughout all parts of your teams?
Sure. So I think Red Ventures has always kind of been on the forefront of inclusivity. Some of the key things that Red Ventures as an organization has done is started different communities to support marginalized groups of people. One of the most prominent groups at our organizations is our We Are platform. And that really stands for the A is for attract, the R is for retain, and the T is for empowerment. These groups meet on a regular basis. They sponsor different groups. They support one another. They connect different individuals in the organizations to mentor and to guide and give coaching and advice for people. A sister company to our We Is group is our We Are group is our She Is group, which is really around empowering women and supporting women. I had an opportunity last year to speak on a panel for She Is. That was a really fulfilling experience for me. I had a number of young ladies reach out to me afterwards, wanted to put time on my calendar to just talk about the experience. And what I didn't realize is that how many people actually look up to me or seek advice from someone. And it's really good to see a person in a position that looks like you or it's the same gender as you. And so I think those type of communities are super important. And another community that we have at Red Ventures that is really galvanized is our We Are Pride, which supports our LGBTQ community as well. And so I think that Red Ventures has done a lot of amazing things in this space, not just those communities, but also I'm a part of a mentorship program that's specifically for minorities in leadership. And I think that that has helped me to kind of connect to people, understand things that I wasn't aware of before. I've worked really closely with our recruiting team. Our recruiting team recently started going to our HBCU universities to seek out talent from our historically Black colleges. Those type of things are super important. I think that I'm excited where we are, but our CEO, Rick Elias, made a commitment to our team this week that it's not just about what we do right now. It's about what we do in 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years. And so I'm really excited to be a part of this organization and for a company that's really digging into it and focusing on it.
Yeah, I just want to highlight something you said, because I think honestly, I've been in my job for 5 years, leading Palm Beach Tech. It'll be 5 years next month. I think that's the first time I've ever heard of companies specifically going to historical Black colleges or minority-oriented colleges in recruiting. And you know, I've heard a lot of different recruitment strategies before, but that's the first time I've ever heard that. And I really, if you're listening or watching this today, that is a huge point that I think could be taken back to your team as a way to improve. But with that, I would love to you know, go to Ricky for a second. And you know, Ricky, you've become just a dynamic individual in the city of West Palm Beach, and because of that, you've gotten to engage with a lot of business leaders and a lot of business owners. How have you been able to work with them to help further your mission? And you know, in the conversation here, maybe give some insights of what tech companies could do to work with people like yourself in the community.
Yeah, I think the thing that was most important to me is helping the community at large realize how important my mission was, not only to my community, but to the city. Oftentimes we think of delinquency and gun violence. We like to keep it contained to the inner city communities, the ghettos. But as you all know, that it trickles out everywhere. So my mission became to help people know that the success of my community is the success of our city. And I think over time, as people began to join me in that mindset, they became increasingly willingly to engage us and to work with us to offer opportunities to the young men in communities like mine that normally, even if they don't get them, they don't have the support to keep them in those workplaces. So I think that plays a large part in how we've done what we've done, is just making our mission attractive to these businesses, because as of now, you see all over the country where major corporations and things of such are becoming more aware of how they do business and how it impacts communities of colors. So I just think because of how we phrased our mission and how we've done our work, maybe we're ahead of the curve, but we were seeing it even more so now in light of the protests going on around the country. So I think helping everyone realize that they have a part to play in us fulfilling our mission helped us to engage the business community.
With that too, for those that don't know, Ricky's got this you know, tagline, catchphrase almost now, of hope dealer. And I was wearing the shirt yesterday. I wore it twice this week, and it frankly needed to go in the wash because I didn't want to do that to everyone else around me. But it's one of my favorite shirts, and it's something that he came up with. And we were walking down the street the other day, and somebody just stopped us and wanted to know where to get the shirt, because it really embodies what you've been able to do and those around you. So I just wanted to give a shout out to that, and check out the website and see more about it. With that, next up, we have Shevrin Jones again. You know, you've worked in your community for a very long time, and I know you're. I mean, I still remember the first time I saw you speak, and you know, you've always just been a dynamic individual yourself, and you know, standing up for something, you know, talking to the right people who can make an impact. What kind of advice would you have for those people who are decision makers in the business community and in the community at large to really prioritize diversity and inclusion and just being a part of solutions in our community?
Joe, that's a good question. The first thing that the business community can do when we're looking at diversity and inclusion is first not making just a talking point. I work for a company right now where I'm the only black person, period, on the executive leadership team. And just last on Tuesday, I made it very clear to our team and to our board, we just hired a leader of our D&I team. And I think it's dangerous for any company to walk into a place and say that we're going to hire somebody to be the director of diversity and inclusion just because of optics. And you're not really doing it because you're really trying to change the narrative of what's happening. And let's go a step further, that in order for companies it's not enough for companies to say that diversity and inclusion is important to us, but your board makeup doesn't look like that, or your leadership team doesn't look like that. If you're going to really call out, ensure that we are moving into a place of transformational change and not just from politics, but also from in the level of in the private sector also. I mean, it is all inclusive in how all of this work. And so my advice would be that if you're really committed to the work of diversity and inclusion, don't just say it. Don't just create tokenism out of it. Be intentional about it, and make sure that your leadership looks like what you're trying to create.
That's a great point. And, you know, frankly, I think there's 100 people on this call now. And, you know, just for the sake of transparency, that's one of the first things we looked at as an organization this week. And, you know, for those who didn't see our email, we put out on our board of directors page what our gender diversity is, what our ethnic diversity is, and what our geographic representation is of our board of directors, to be fully transparent. And, you know, I asked our board of directors, we're going through actually board recruitment right now, just as we go through the year, this summer's, you know, from our fiscal year, the time that we do that. And we were halfway through the process, and I said, we've got to check ourselves and figure out how we lead from the top down on this issue. So that's something as an organization that I've asked our board and I've asked our team to look at, and they've been very, very thoroughly, because I completely agree with you, Shevrin. It comes from the top down, and the way you form your leadership and team and your policies up top really reflect on everything that you do. With that, I wanted to you know, bring up a statistic just for the entire panel, just to kind of respond to, and this is something according to the Center for Talent Innovation. They put out a survey that said 58% of Black professionals have experienced racial prejudice at work, which is, of course, higher than any other racial or ethnic group surveyed. It's kind of difficult reading that, but just generally to our panel, to April, Ricky, and Shevrin, what does that statistic make you think about or make you feel?
For me, it makes me feel a lot of different things. The first thing is sadness, because I know as a Black woman, I've experienced overt racism as well as microaggressions, right? And while it's hurtful, you're trying to, as an individual, you're trying to figure out how you can make yourself better. Do I need to work harder? How do I get into the group? Or what do I need to do to make people see me? And that's a tough feeling. And it's, as hard as it is, you have to persevere. You have to figure out a way to push it aside, but to still do the job that you need to do. But you also have to acknowledge it, and you have to ask other people to acknowledge it too. And so there's a feeling of sadness, a feeling of disappointment, really disappointed, because we've been having these conversations year after year after year, and there hasn't been a lot of change. Disappointment because I have a daughter who asked me, Mom, I thought that these problems were already solved. And that's tough because I don't have an answer for that. I wish they were solved. But there's also some hopefulness in it. I'm hopeful that this time we can get it right, that more people have awareness. I have a lot of coworkers, friends, peers that have reached out to me that said, I'm sorry, I didn't know, I didn't realize. And I'm trying to do better. I'm trying to educate myself. I think that the hopefulness is what kind of keeps us going forward. And if people don't just focus on what's happening right now. George Floyd brought attention to it, but this wasn't the first time. And so we got to keep our attention focused on it. We've got to continue to do better. We have to check ourselves because there are so many biases that we have as individuals, and that causes us to make decisions. But if we don't even acknowledge those biases and we don't search our souls to figure out like why, I think that one of the things that it can be extremely impactful is that people of privilege really understand how they can use that privilege to help other people. The word that I keep hearing this week is, how can I be an ally? I definitely want you to be an ally, but I want you to advocate for me. I want you to make room for me at the table. I want you to bring my name up, bring up other people's name. I want you to support me. That's what I really want. So those are the emotions that I have about it.
And Joe, just to first of all, April hit the nail on the head, and so there's nothing to add to that. There's a sign that I have on my door when you come into in Tallahassee, and it says "Check your privilege here," and that goes for everybody. And April said it's important that we look at not only the statistics and say that oh, this is a problem. We have to then go to the next step and say, as companies, as legislators, as whoever, what are we going to do about it? What use is the number if we're not going to actually move forward to make changes within it? And Joe, it gives me great. It makes me feel great that you said that, we went back in our company and we reevaluated some things. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm hoping that companies across this country, that their first board meeting, that they're asking that same question. What do we need to do to change policies within our companies to make sure that we are not excluding anybody from outside of this company?
And I'd just like to add, April really did hit it on the head pretty well. When I'm around my people, I'm an individual amongst many. I can be an individual, but when I enter spaces where I'm the only Black guy, I realize that I'm representing every Black man in America, and that's unfair to me. And I tell my young men that it's unfair to them that everywhere they go, they're being seen through the lens of every other Black person in America. So they have to be on their best behavior in order to represent their kind well. And it's statistics like these, just like you could just imagine the burden that's placed on people of color, even when they are entering into these spaces where they don't feel like they can report any discrimination that they may be feeling because Black people always feel discriminated against. So you just got all these different types of things that mentally we're dealing with that don't really even get to come to the forefront unless conversations like this are happening. And I saw something on social media that really attracted me, but like it was, it's not my responsibility to teach white people how to check their privilege. This is a conversation that they really need to be having about how to be more inclusive to people coming from where we're coming from. So I just wanted to add that on to what Shevrin and April had already said. But it is disheartening to see those statistics. But, we all knew there was work to be done. And I think we're finally at a place where most people are acknowledging it, but it's time to move to action.
And on a personal note there, I mean, I've really tried to be introspective this past week. I feel like we've all tried to be that way. But Monday morning, walking around, about to come into the office, I came across, I was retracing some of the steps of the protest from Sunday night. And, everything was pretty much cleaned up from it, except for this one sign right in a fence there of some of the road work that was being done. It simply said, "Everyone deserves respect." And that was, for me, just the one thing I kind of took from my introspection this week, but that's just kind of stuck with me that whole time. For whatever reason, that one sign was left there through it all. But I want to go back to Ricky here for a second, because as I said before, you're really boots on the ground, and we had a really interesting conversation yesterday when we were talking about the conversation today about what we could do for some of the young men you work with, for example. But just as kind of a case study, and one of the things we talked about was the importance of technology to young men and women in our society today, and how it can really kind of help build their future. And we talked a little bit about that, and I would love to kind of hear your thoughts on what a community like this, for the 100 or so people who are on here, to use their technology skills to kind of give back and maybe mentoring or volunteering, and how important that would be to some of the kids that we work with.
I think it would be extremely important. These kids are built for tech. They're growing up in a world where technology is all around them, and we do them a huge disservice by not exposing them to it, especially early on. But I look at the work I do with them in regards to social emotional learning. A lot of the young people that we work with come from homes where fathers aren't present, and they're not getting the skills that they need to succeed outside of the community that they need. And so when we get a lot of these young people, they're quiet, they don't want to talk, they're not expressive, because in communities like ours, showing emotion is a sign of weakness. But over time, through consistent exposure, patience, empathy, and walking shoulder to shoulder with them, these young men have become shining stars. Like when we're together, just for instance, yesterday during one of our meetings, a young man came in and he was very heavy, very upset, got kicked out of the house the night before. And usually they wouldn't want to share those things kind of going on, but he felt the freedom to share them with his brothers in the group. And we allowed a group to do the teaching. So you got guys looking him in his eyes, affirming him, advising him, letting him know that everything will be all right. Everything that he grew up thinking was wrong or uncool, they're at home in. So I say, like, if we could take kids that many people consider hardened and turn them into feeling, being self-aware individuals, we can do the same with them in regards to tech, education, employment, anything. But it's going to take the same kind of diligence that my team and I were exercising. So it can't be a one-stop shop. It can't be a when things get hard or it doesn't seem like they're picking it up, we walk out. But it's going to have to be something that involves consistent effort over time until they get it. So I think we have people in place that are willing to walk that journey with us. But that's what needs to happen, because as my philosophy with my group, once these young men get it, they'll be your evangelists back to the communities. They'll be the one doing the work there. You won't have to do the work. So the investment you make in these young men, you can be sure that they will go and make that investment in others. And I think that's the starting point with anything, especially tech.
Awesome. Very well said. And, I owe you actually some more conversation on what we could do to be a part of that for your kids and for your organization too. So we'll get a beer on that this weekend and talk more about it.
Sounds good.
Next up, April, I wanted to ask, I mean, it's as difficult of a conversation as it can be. There's obvious conflict that can arise in a workplace setting around diversity and inclusion. Maybe somebody said something, maybe somebody did something and didn't even think about it or didn't even know. And I know there's a lot of, awareness that goes into this, but how would you suggest those who are confronting issues of diversity and inclusion in the workplace confront that conflict constructively with their teams?
Sure. I think the first thing is that you should deal with it straight on. I think everybody who works with me knows that I'm a straight shooter. I think the worst thing that you can do is to just sit on it and let it fester and kind of build up. If you talk about it directly with the individual, what you can learn is why that happened. You can understand the other person's point of view. And diversity is a special type of conflict, but with any type of conflict, it's always about listening to understand versus listening to respond, right? And so I often bring my team members together, regardless of the type of conflict, to just talk through it. And I think the other thing to understand is that just being honest saying your comment made me feel this way, right? I think there's no shame in showing vulnerability. And I think it actually is a sign of strength when you're able to confront it directly. I do fully understand that sometimes there are conflicts and you are worried about how you're going to be perceived. Are they thinking that you're playing the race card, or are they thinking this, or are they thinking that? But I think lead with that. Say, I understand that there may be this perception, but this is how this made me feel. How can we move forward? I am a huge advocate of direct communication.
And thank you for that too. That's good advice for us all. And Chev, I want to bring it to you for a second, because there's been a lot going on the last 2 weeks, and I'm curious, kind of from your position as a legislator and as an elected leader, what kind of policy changes and what kind of legislation are you hearing about, or that you're seeing kind of moving at various levels, right? Local, state, federal, that can really be good for us to understand and to highlight, what kind of changes that are ongoing in the world around us to provide some of that positive, constructive move forward that we all hope to see.
That's a good question, Joe. And I also want to piggyback on one thing and make it very clear that these conversations are not comfortable. Conversations are uncomfortable conversations that have to be had, and everybody has to be willing to have the uncomfortable conversation. Let's start there. The second thing is from a policy perspective, I was on NPR yesterday, and Luis Hernandez asked me the question, what policies do you believe needs to happen in order for us to change things in this country? And I'll share the same thing with you like I shared with Luis, that if our expectation is for policy to change hearts, then we are in trouble. Because I've been in the legislature for 8 years and I've seen policy change and people usurp the policy because they find the loophole in it. And so what we have to begin doing is stop hiring the people who keep usurping the policies and making sure that goes from police officers and that goes to the business community also. And even sharing with as far as police are concerned, is that since you want to as it pertains to what policies can be changed, looking at it from a policy perspective, there is a slew of things that need to happen. And this is not anti-police, because even speaking to the chief of police yesterday and for the president of the police union, we agreed on one thing. There is a culture that has been created over the years when it comes to the police and the community, especially within the Black community, that it's a total disconnect. And what we have to do is start to look at, how does this look? How can we begin changing our use of force policies? How can we begin changing things like from the chokehold policies? How can we change policies to ensure that we're not hiring bad actors before they get fired from one place and go to another police force? These are the type of things that need to happen. And are these conversations happening now? In Congress, they are. They're not in session for the next month. And in Tallahassee, these conversations won't come up until January when we go back into session. But here's my fear with us not going back into Tallahassee into January. My fear is that we go back to square one because people have short-term memories. Are we going to allow this and let it carry on to January, especially in Florida, to ensure that another George Floyd don't happen? Because if not, if we don't really pay close attention, we will be right back here at square one if we don't handle it now.
Yeah, and actually, that's a pretty good segue into a question that we got online, and a really good point for us all to understand. Because I don't know about everyone, but I feel like a lot of what's on the top of our minds sometimes is driven by the media, when it really means it should be driven by our values and our personal priorities and our morals. But that said, I want to go to a question from Todd Albert, one of our members from Boca Code, who asked, do you think that we've had a major backslide in the last few years? And this is to everyone, major backslide in the last few years on all of these issues, or is it just that there's more things coming to light? And if you want to ask questions, just dump them in either chat that you're looking at right now.
That's a good question, and there's someone put something on Facebook not too long ago. I think Will Smith or someone said that the real answer is don't go anywhere. I mean, it's always been there. Now it's being recorded. It's being recorded. It has been happening. Police brutality has been happening, but now I can pull out my camera and show you that it's happening. And so that's the difference between what's been happening and where we are now. And listen, I am convinced that the time that we are in now, that even my white friends are sick of it. I literally got a text message from one of my Republican friends, and she said, "Can you call me?" She said, "Because I'm not okay." And just speaking on the phone with her, she was boohoo crying because she made it clear that she had not done enough, and what can she do? And if we can start having more of these conversations and us reaching out to these to individuals, whether they are in a place of power, whether they are decision makers, and making sure that I just saw somebody say, put it in here, that we have to be comfortable with having uncomfortable conversations. And that goes on all levels. And it goes for every last one of us. And just picking up the phone and having that uncomfortable conversation, and even asking your friend, your Black friend, your Hispanic friend, your gay friend, your trans friend, are you okay? And how can I help you?
Yep. Ricky or April, do you want to respond to that? Good. All right, we'll go to another question then from Renee de Leon from Kroger Digital, which is everyone knows Kroger, the restaurant or the grocery chain. They have a digital presence with their tech team in Boca Raton. Considering that a significant number or higher level positions are never posted but filled within a manager's network, what can we do as a community to ensure those networks themselves are inclusive and diverse?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So going back to one of the things I said that we're doing is recruiting at historically Black colleges. I think that is incredibly important. One of the things that people often say is like, we don't have diversity because there's no diversity in the pipeline. Okay, that is a valid point, but how do you source that pipeline? That's where we start talking about the systematic injustices. And so we have to look for people that we want in the places where they are. So we can't just assume that everybody's going to find us. And so I think one of the things that we could do is definitely look beyond our Ivy League colleges, our big state universities, figure out where additional people are. I think we've done a great job of looking at boot camps and going into different communities. A couple of the programs that Red Ventures has are our Life Hoops program, which basically mentors young men and women that through sports and give them exposure to it. And so once you get those individuals in the pipeline, then you have to really concentrate and you have to invest in them and mentor them. And so as you continue to invest and promote them, then you will start seeing the boardroom look a little bit different. It won't be just one Black lady there. It will be more people because you've invested in that.
And there was a question here added by Stephen Cruz. And I'm going to ask Ricky to kind of hop on this one a little bit too. And that's how do we handle discussions where there's blame being deflected, or conversations that are difficult I think in general, Stefan, you're hitting on, conversations we have in our workplace with our colleagues and our friends. How do we handle these conversations that might be uncomfortable and or might be, a little uncertain of how to handle them?
Yeah, can I add one little caveat to that?
Yeah,
so
please.
I'm specifically talking about discussions where we are talking about issues of race, and then it becomes about guns or all lives matter, or I really care so much about George Floyd's death, but these riots are destroying the country, where it's like it becomes about something that we're not really trying to talk about. It becomes like, hey, I'm going to shed some alligator tears, but really this is the thing that I actually care about.
Yeah.
How do we deal with those discussions?
It's dependent. As far as me, before entering any discussion, if I feel like you're not genuine and wanting to find truth, I don't waste energy in those types of discussions. I'm a very empathetic person. I'm willing to engage anyone. You could be an avowed racist. I'll still sit down and have the conversation with you if you're willing to have the hard conversation. But if it's something that you're just leveraging for another interest, then you got to have the wisdom to decide where and when to engage and determine what's worth your energy and what's not. And I think when we try to engage everything, that's when we become depleted of our energy. We just lose it. So you got to exercise wisdom. I don't even know how I've managed to decide what to engage, what not, and what not to, but it's worked for me so far. And it's a nuanced thing, in my opinion. I don't know if April or Shevrin have anything they can add to answer that, but it's so nuanced to me.
I think the thing about it is you have to really figure out who's genuine who really wants to understand. You can't change somebody's mind who really doesn't want to be changed. If they're entering the conversation to debate you about it, it's not worth the conversation. Because one of the things that Christian always says is you can have strong opinions, but they need to be loosely held, and they are loosened by becoming educated on it. And so if people aren't willing to educate themselves, it's not worth the conversation from my point of view.
Period.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said here, you know, in terms of how I feel like everyone's had a conversation at least a few times this week about the events of the last couple of weeks. So, you know, that being said, like those are really good points to take in understanding, you know, when to engage and when not to. I mean, you know, even to those closest to us, you know. There was another question. Sorry, there's another question posted here from Kelsey. You know, Kelsey, if you're on, maybe if you want to unmute yourself, and you can you can ask. Excuse me, a little choked up there.
Yeah. So I was just wondering how we can keep the conversation going long term to get to those major moments in government and legislation when social media is so volatile, and you even see the swings in what politics are talking about so quickly and so adamantly at different points.
Kelsey, that's a really good question. The first thing is, I'm looking at this. I just started scrolling back. I thought my first screen was all the people that was on there. There's a lot of y'all on here. Jesus, I gotta make sure I don't mess up. But the first thing is that of all of us that's on here, imagine if, and this is a real imaginative, right? Imagine if after every last one of us get off here today, you log off, and then you jot down how you can contribute to this cause and move this from just being a conversation, right? Because we all have a place in where we can do it. The government can't solve this issue, period. I don't know what people's political background is, and I don't want to get into that. I don't care whether you're Democrat or Republican. Let's not wait for them to come to save us. We can save ourselves. How can we do that? It's more of us than them. And we can make this happen. If we look at any great movement that ever happened across this country, Kelsey, it has been with people who started those movements. The people are individuals who move the agenda from moving these conversations from well, now in 2020 and 2020, from Zoom calls to actually action. And so we are the ones who can make that movement. But the only problem is are we willing to jump off of social media? And are we willing to move from social media to going into places that might not be popular, but they're necessary? And that's what we have to begin to ask the question. I mean, my Instagram, people have been dropping in my DMs all week asking about what can we do, right? It's more than just saying how can we handle this or what can we do to move this forward, because all it would be is just a conversation, and after the conversation we're gonna put pen to paper. So my suggestion is that we all have a responsibility to move it from here to the next level by moving it just from talk to actually action, by putting it on paper, saying this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to commit to doing it, and moving it from there. That's the way I look at it. I don't know if anyone will see it any different, but especially from a policy aspect, that's my contribution to that question.
No, I think you nailed it spot on. It's got to be about action. It has to be about what are you doing when the cameras aren't rolling, when people aren't talking about it anymore? How do you keep it going? If you're committing to mentoring a group of young men, you need to make sure you're doing it not just in June now, you need to be doing it in June 2022. You need to consistently and maintain that. It's not popular then, and it's not going to get a bunch of news headlines, but that's what has to happen. Every individual has to find out what is the thing that they want to do, and they have to be consistent about it. It's about forming habits, and it has to become a part of who you are and what your daily actions are.
Thank you. That's like really powerful and helpful for me to hear, and hopefully inspiring for people to take action and write things down. That's helpful. Thank you.
And from my perspective, I just want to throw out something that we're doing here for a minute. I don't know if anyone has ever heard the "I won't do it again" excuse. I was really good at that when I was 5 years old. I won't do it again, mom or dad. But I don't think that works here, right? It's saying, "Yeah, well, this won't happen again because we've learned our lesson." You got to really put some change into place. And we have upcoming board meetings for Palm Beach Tech, and I'm putting things on the agenda to say, this is things we need to do to make sure that we as an organization are leading. And we're not following. We're not waiting for the world around us to change. We're being part of the solution as a group of people who are all committed to the change that we want to see. And Ricky keeps on bringing up this phrase, I don't know how many times. Every time I see him, I think about it. Real change happens when the people who need it lead it. Well, I feel like there's a lot of people in our organization that need to see this change. So we're going to do our best to lead it. But in the same thing, I think is true in workplaces. If you're in your companies, your teams, finding ways that you can put either policies in place or procedures, or just change the way you do some things. And April brought up a great point early on in the conversation about recruiting from historically Black colleges and making sure you have a diverse pool of applicants. Those things to me are really great ideas that we can change things about how we go about our daily lives or how we go about our work. And I just wanted to kind of throw out there that I'm looking at that, we're looking at that, and we're going to make things change. We're going to be a part of that. With that, we have about 5 more minutes left in the conversation. So I really wanted to reserve that time for any closing thoughts for our guests here today. And I really wanted to give them a shout out and thank them for being a part of this conversation. So April, Ricky, Shev, if you have any closing thoughts, would love to give you the floor for just a few minutes while we have them on.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for everybody taking the time out of their day to have this important conversation. That's where it all starts at, by listening so that you can understand what the problem is so that we can start to express empathy. So that's the first thing I want to say. And the other thing I wanted to say is to just encourage people to keep the action going. As I said, it's about not what happens today, but what's happening in a year or 2 years from now. Obviously, hit me up on Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever. I'm happy to have the conversation.
I goes with real change happens when the people who need it lead it. Black people shouldn't be the only ones wanting or needing racial justice in this country. So if you're white and you're an ally and you need it, lead it in your realms. There's no degree of perfection you need to have before leading these conversations in your realms. So I challenge you to that. Real change happens when the people who need it lead it. Go lead it.
First of all, again, Joe, thank you so much for putting this conversation together. I would love to stay connected with all of you. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter. My name is just Shevrin Jones on both of them. I would love to keep the conversation going and see what you're doing, and you can see what I'm doing, and let's change the world together. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Emmett Till. I can keep going. I can keep naming names. The next question now becomes, after naming those names, what are we going to do to make sure not another name is listed for racial injustices that's happening in this country? We all have a responsibility. Every last one of you guys on this Zoom call, I don't care what your color is, your race, your gender, we are all brothers and sisters. And I want to treat you as such. I want to see you as such. We only have very little time on this earth. It might seem like a long time, but we have very little time on this earth. And I promise you, history will judge us on what we are doing. And I ask yourself the question, what do you want to be remembered as? And that's what I want to leave you with.
Very good point. All 3 of these folks, I've looked up to for some time. And, you guys taking an hour out of your day to be a part of this conversation, I personally appreciate it. Folks like Ricky, I see every day. Shev, I've only come across a couple times, but actions speak for themselves, and these are 3 people of action that I'm really proud to have the conversation with today. So with that, I want to thank everybody for being a part of it today. We had over 100 people on our Zoom here and a bunch of other people on Facebook and LinkedIn watching and commenting as well. The conversation is not over. The conversation keeps going. So keep having the conversation. We're going to keep doing things from our end as an organization, and there's a lot that we can do, and we're going to do everything we can. So thank you again. Have a great day, everybody, and hopefully a very nice weekend as well.